Between 1750 and 1860, one of the most infamous events in Scottish history took place within the most northern reaches of our nation. Approximately 70,000 people were forced into eviction, displacement and even emigration, with profiteering and landlordism from the nobility forcing a change in lifestyle which saw the evisceration of a culture with the aim of developing agricultural processes designed to extract as much money as possible from the lands. The result was the Highland clearances, with the Scottish diaspora moving as far away as Canada and New Zealand, seeking to restore some sense of livelihood. And while we may never see the same levels of populace within Scotland's northern glens to the same degree, it isn't stopping Uncle Roy from giving it his best shot with his signing policy at Ross County. With no wins going into the final game of the first quarter, Rovers go up to Dingwall to face a Ross County side who have brought in no less than 17 new faces alongside a new manager and assistant during this first quarter of the season. This, of course, is the Oh No 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 podcast. I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir, and we're back to look ahead to yet another weekend of Scottish football with Raith Rovers in the Championship. Joining me tonight, he's back right in time. We've got a resident tutor, Leslie Maven. How you doing, Les?
Not bad at all. Not entirely sure if the game's going to go ahead this weekend at the time we're recording, but very glad to be back here. Literally been in the jungle for a couple of weeks, and I'm quite happy to be back to the slightly more temperate and wet and colder climes of the Greater Highland region and the Gaelic Tad. So good to be back on.
Good stuff. And of course, with a man that's also been flying himself, we've got Scott Fleming. Slightly shorter flight, shall we say, Scott?
I think it's a much shorter flight. Much easier to get to Holland and back than what Les has been up to. But good to be back. I'm back for one of my mates is getting married this weekend, so back over for that. Even if the weather was decent, I still wouldn't be heading up to Dingwall, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll get a good chat about it, and we'll hopefully see a decent result this weekend.
Yeah, well, we'll start off as, of course, just taking a look ahead to the game and talking about a bit about Ross County. Just stick with yourself, Scott. A tumultuous start to the season, shall we say. Don Cowie gets sacked. Tony Docherty comes in. Brings in Callum Davidson, a bit of a strange move there as well. A manager at this level last season. By this point last year, he'd not even beaten Rangers in the Cup. A former double-winning manager, but now he's up in Dingwall as an assistant. What have your thoughts been in general with Ross County and everything that's going on with them so far? I know it's a bit of a wide brushstroke to start with, but we'll kick it off there.
I think you've kind of summed it up. It has been pretty bizarre, I would say. Like, everybody kind of coming into this season was expecting Ross County to be obviously one of the very strong teams in the Championship, one of the teams that was early favourites, just because the fact that what they've done previously in the league in terms of spend a bit more cash than the rest of the league when they have dropped into the league, and just do enough in terms of making sure they pick up enough of the better players in the league, or maybe the sort of worst players in the top flight that maybe are in that bracket. They've done it so many times, the bracket too good for the Championship, no good enough for the top flight, which they seem to pick up again. I know that in our group chat over the summer, we were kind of going, that's a pretty decent addition or solid enough signings, but in the fact that they've kept a hold of Ronan Hale as well. I know he has scored a few goals, but I think I still expected them not to be sitting ninth position after almost the first quarter. Like, it is a bit bizarre, and the whole management situation. Like my dad was saying earlier tonight, actually, he wouldn't be surprised if this sort of run kept going. I know it's a bit of a long shot considering the fact they've brought in Tony Docherty already just during the season. He reckons that Callum Davidson could be the manager basically by Christmas time, by the way he was sounding, if it keeps going this way. But yeah, we'll just have to see. And I do think that they seem to have signed a lot of guys that are just too samey. They've not got a lot of difference in terms of their midfield. I mean, they were signing guys like Jamie Lindsay and Ross Docherty and all these guys in the middle of the park. I'm pretty certain they play the exact same role. And I know, well, we've got two of them, and we moan when Matthews and Brown are playing. So, like, when they've got 4 or 5 of them to pick for, you can imagine their fans are probably going, well, we're playing 4 at the same. I think they've even got, is it Connor Randall can play in the middle of the park as well? So, like, I know he can play right back also, but you've got too many guys, I think, there with too much experience and too much the same thoughts and how they play the game. So when you look at it, you go, well, I can see why it maybe isn't going as good, but I also didn't expect them to be struggling as much as they are.
Leslie, you're nodding your head away there. Do you think that was
Aye.
the case with County? They're going for the names rather than the sort of maybe the substance that St Johnstone have ended up with?
I would pretty much agree, I think, with what Scott said there. I suppose the one thing I would probably add is you would imagine that purely with the quality of players that you have, you'd be able to put something out most weeks that you would think would get you into the top 2. So if you've got on your roster, ITX, Declan Gallagher, Ross Docherty, Ronan Hale, Jordan White, if you've got guys like that at your disposal, it shouldn't take rocket science to put them out and organise them in a way that just through brute force, if nothing else, they're going to beat most of the teams in the league. So I was having a wee look at some of their stats from recent games and some of the performances earlier today. Ross County have scored 1 goal from open play in their last 4 games, which is bananas. When you think about who's available and the quality that they have, and with respect, the quality of the opposition that they've faced over those games, that is an absolutely wild stat.
A very Rafe Rovers 24-25 stat, that one.
I was just going to say, you took the words right out of my mouth, because I was going to say, to an extent, I sympathise, because the start of our season last season was a bit like that you looked at our squad and you thought across the piece there was real quality throughout the piece, but it just wasn't coming together at all in a kind of unfathomable way. But I think Ross County is even more bizarre, and with respect, we didn't have a Ronan Hale. Vaughan got injured pretty early on. Hamilton wasn't fully fit. We didn't have guys like that kind of kicking about the squad, and we certainly didn't have a squad size that you would need an Airbus A380 to transport to games. So, I mean, you've got to imagine that at some point it's going to click, and they're going to win 10 games in a row or something like that, and they're going to absolutely batter somebody. At some point, it's going to click. But they're already, I looked at the table, they're already, 18 points behind St Johnstone?
Yeah.
They're not going to make that up. I mean, I still think there's a good chance they could come second, because, Partick, ourselves, Ayr, we'll all have a rotten spell in the season where we'll lose 5 in the bounce or something. We've all got that in us. But, they've got the possibility to make that up. But they're not going to catch St Johnstone already. That's insurmountable.
Yeah, with the way that the table stands at the moment, County are only on the 4 points. Admittedly, they have scored. I mean, they've got 9 goals, conceded 14. Compared to us, we've got 10 and conceded 6. We've both played the same number of games. There's that 10-point gap between us. Partick overtake us with their win. I'm intrigued as to how the next couple of quarters will go, because with the league it is so tight that a couple of wins, we've seen that already with Ayr United. They win back-to-back games for the first time in a good wee while, and then they jump right up the league, and they're 4 points behind us now. So it could be a difficult measure. To go back to the squad size, Scott, do you think, I mean, I mentioned right at the top of the episode, 17 new faces in the summer. Already 2 are out the door because Adam Emsley and Aaron Lyle have gone out on loan to Cove and Greenock Morton respectively. Do you think that's maybe, though, a bit of a hindrance, because they're up to about a squad of roughly about 30 bodies, I think, now, and there's only so many spaces that you can have?
I thought I seen that on Twitter that somebody said that they could technically, on paper, put 3 11s out, like going by how many players that they had. I don't know if that was before they loaned a few boys out or what, but like when you're at that sort of size of squad, especially at our level, I can get it if you're, I suppose, a team in the top flight playing in Europe and you want to have a bigger squad that can cope with Thursday, Sunday, or Wednesday, Saturday, these sort of things. Ross County are playing Saturday to Saturday unless of a postponement or whatever. But that there's no reason that or no need for them to be having over 30 players, because at the end of the day, you're always going to have like almost, well, basically over 10 players in the stand, like every time. Obviously, you will get injuries and suspensions throughout the season as well, but to me, it's just pure greed on the part of Ross County and Roy McGregor in terms of just trying to pick up anybody that's in their books decent for the championship level, and to possibly potentially stop any rival getting them. Like, I mean, the Aaron Lyle one just is actually the prime example of they didn't need him, they've not been using him, so they send him back to where he's came from in Morton. But like I think it was you, Robbie, as well, that said in the group chat during the week, this is just what happened to Kyle Turner and Charlie Telfer. This is the exact same thing. And this is actually when they've been in the championship, not in the top flight. Whereas Turner and Telfer, they were at least in the top flight when they went there. But I just... And they did it with the other, Lammy as well went up there. Didn't they get played? And then he's came back down to Hamilton and whatever. But so they've got a history of doing it. But I don't know. I've never really spoke to Ross County fans to find out really what they think of it. Like, to me, I just genuinely think it is Roy McGregor's just saying to his manager, look, I'm happy to back you and you go and get who you want. And the manager clearly just goes, oh, well, I'll just get him and I'll get him and I'll get him. And Roy McGregor just seems to tick it off and just let him do it. So, and also the fact that they've went into the loan market on the last day, realising, oh, we've went underneath 30, we need to go above 30 again. So they went and got another 2 or 3 signings, and one of them's injured straight away. So it's, I just think it's all bizarre up there what's going on this season.
It's worth saying, I mean, I don't know if it's a manager thing. I mean, it'll be, I don't know who their equivalent of John Potter is. I don't know if it's still Stephen Ferguson or if he's moved upstairs. But you'd imagine there'll be somebody there who's above the manager. I mean, so they've got John Robertson as well, I think, in the picture now. And this has been going on for a few seasons. So whether it's somebody at a higher level within the club, or whether it's just a philosophy that, as you say, comes from Uncle Roy and goes downwards, that we've got to have a cast of thousands in our squad. I mean, to an extent, like you're saying, I get it. You know, we've seen our title challenge derailed because we've had to play Scott Brown in defence. You know, we've had games where, in recent memory, our bench has been Ethan Ross on painkillers and Conor McBride. You don't want that. But equally, there's a point where you don't need that many players. You're not going to have that many injuries. You're not going to have a cholera outbreak in your squad. You know, you just are not going to need that many players. And on Lyle as well, people have got very short memories. Nobody seems to remember what happened with Lewis Vaughan. I know that, I mean, I think you've got to be very, very bold to loan a player out to another club in the division, and you've got to be extremely confident that it's not going to come back and bite you on the bum.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't think you're going to be directly jousting with Morton for a place at the end of the season, you've no idea if he's going to score a goal down the line that's going to trigger a butterfly effect or a domino effect that's going to lead to you missing out on the playoffs or something. It's not worth taking the risk.
There's been a few moves at this level, even within the last week. Like, you've seen Jake Hastie go from Ayr to Airdrie. He's fallen out the picture under Scott Brown, and he's familiar with Airdrie as a club. I do think, I mean, it's hard to foresee a situation. The Vaughan one was just outright rank like daftness. Like, there's no other way to put it, because we were only like 4 points ahead, and like, I can't even remember if we had like a lower goal difference in them. Nere's Toe Poker, they put out a tweet quite recently because someone was sort of like comparing the championship squad sizes, and he basically said that because the list that they put together, County were sitting on a squad of 29 at that point. But then if you take out the players that are born before, or basically a number of the players who are over 21, then you're effectively looking about 22, 23-ish for both them and Saints. Every other club in the championships in their teens, in terms of they've got between, the lowest was Queen's Park on 14, we're sitting on 17. The second highest, Ayr United, on 18. I mean, Scott, do you think that's maybe an indication of sort of the clubs coming down? I know the Saints have been very well managed. It's a very different situation up in Ross County in the sense that, sure, that they do feel that they are well managed as a club. Roy McGregor's got his community ties, but also at the same time, it's an open secret within Scottish football that he's basically props them up and he can offset them because he's got a really, really significant oil and energy business, which conveniently helps them a lot. But do you think maybe figures like that indicate sort of the sort of different figures that maybe clubs coming down from the top flight are playing with?
Yeah, I think to an extent it will. I think also, like the sort of stat that you brought out there, it seems to be that they've decided to go down the sort of really experienced route for player recruitment as well, which I can't say that I would say that it's a bad thing. Like, you want experience in your changing room, I would imagine, because they'll have thought, right, let's try and get in a few guys that have won the league, know the league, like Declan Gallagher and Ross Docherty. And I'll openly say, I think most of us probably went two solid signings for this level, and not really anybody could argue with it. It was just more the fact that, as I've said already, when they started bringing in more midfielders that were looking the exact same as Ross Docherty, as Jamie Lindsay, I was just like, well, what's going on here? I was intrigued to what formation they were going to be playing for a start when they had all these boys coming in. But yeah, I think, again, I don't know how the locals take it in terms of wanting to see more sort of youth product coming through in their team. I mean, we're obviously seeing the likes of Kai Montague, who we've brought in the other season there, coming through, starting to get some minutes. I know that obviously Barry Robson touched on it after the game there, saying that it was a good impact that he made and got the assist, obviously, for the goal on Saturday. But at the same time, he seems to be very keen to mention that he wants to get him more minutes, but it's difficult to do so every week when either games are close, or if we're trying to close out a game, it's maybe hard to say to Kai to go on, considering he's not really a guy that's going to sort of defend a lead necessarily. I mean, I think he'll do a job and he'll run about and he'll try his hardest, but he's not exactly like Sean Byrne, for instance. If he's on the bench, that's the guy you would turn to if you're closing out a game, if you've only got a 1-goal lead, rather than Kai Montague. Whereas if it's on the other way that you're chasing a game, maybe then you go to somebody like Montague. But yeah, as I say, I think you've got to strike a balance between experience and youth to try and win any league, to be honest, in Scotland. But they seem to have kind of gone the complete opposite in terms of getting too much mixed experience. It might even be a case with all the experience that they're kind of, I don't know, after games, are they all like arguing with each other because they all think that they're experienced enough that they can. I mean, how many of that lot have been captains at previous clubs? I don't actually know on paper, but straight away I know that Gallagher will have captained Livy at some point, and Doherty captained Ayr and Dundee United at some points. So, like, straight away you got two there. And there's, I think Conor Randall's captained County at times as well. So you're going to have probably times where they're clashing as well. So I really don't see how this is going to turn around so quickly. But I suppose that's Tony Docherty and Callum Davidson's issue rather than ours. But yeah, they will get better because they can't get any worse than they are now. Like, they can't at this level. I know the old Mick McCarthy one of "it can" would come back
just
here.
Running through my head there, Scott.
It's just, with the teams that are in the league, I'm sorry, but they will get better than 9th in the Championship. But to what extent they're going to get better, I can't tell you right now.
Yeah, you raise a very valid point. I mean, to go back to the Rovers aspect of it, I think that's a good thing about the game against Arbroath. I'd sort of not so much complained, but I was kind of raising the question on Twitter after the game a couple of games ago, where like we were trying to get back into the game, and the subs that we brought on, like we're just not hadn't been using any of the really younger lads, like the Josh Gentles, Paul Niso that we've brought in, and it was just sort of asking the question like, when's going to be the right time to use them? And I think that, I don't know, maybe Barry Robson's got kind of tier preferences as to when he's going to use them in a game where you're sort of maybe multiple goals up. That's the point to bring them in. But to tie that into County, with County, they've got the experience there on the bench, as you rightfully mentioned and we've discussed. But um, looking at their sort of thread on Pie and Bovril, it was interesting because a lot of the chat about the dynamic with their club is they're fully compass mentis as a fan base. I mean, they've had it rammed down their throat by everyone else, and you're going to be aware, a club like Ross County, it's making the most of it while the sun's shining, effectively, because they know that Roy McGregor's not going to be about forever. A question of whether his family is, that's a completely different question. It might be that his kids aren't interested in football, etc., that they want to look down other avenues. But yeah, just they don't really have as such in terms of me. I'm sure that they do have things like an academy, etc., but they don't really seem to bring youth players through. I mean, I think the last players that they were really looking at talking about was the Dingwall brothers. We're familiar with Tony, and I think they had Russell as well. So it's.
I think they've got, is it the young centre half seems to have came through, is it Dylan Smith?
Oh, I'm not
I
too
think
sure.
I've seen, I'm sure he's came through their academy, but I get your point though, they haven't really brought through loads of young talent in the last sort of 5 to 10 years anyway.
Did Ross McKeever not come through at Dingwall? I could be totally wrong.
I mean,
Or was that
again,
Inverness?
Not sure.
He's definitely from the Highlands. He's definitely from the Highlands. With a name like that, he's got to be from the Highlands. So I'm not sure if that was County, but I think he might have come through up there.
yeah, but even with that, it's very for the region that it's in and the support that County have within the area, because they do. I know this is the thing that County fans say, they attract a fan base from the wider community across the north of Scotland, because that's their sort of local team. That it's not really reflective in terms of the same. Maybe I don't know if it's maybe a cultural thing in terms of the interest in terms of sport up that neck of the woods, but just again, it doesn't feel to have the same pool. I don't know whether it's maybe an investment thing. Very hard to say as an outsider, but they don't really seem to have that youth aspect. And with the money that they've got, certainly feels very different in terms of compared to maybe Cali, who've had to try and bleed through. Admittedly, they're obviously pulling through youngsters from other clubs as well, notably Aberdeen, where they seem to have a lot of their youth system. To take it back to County, though, as you allude to, though, I think it was yourself, Leslie, they bring in Sean Mackey, who almost immediately, rather bizarre situation, gets injured. I'm not even sure if it was in the warm up for a bounce game. What did you make of that? It's just, when your luck's not in, it's definitely not in there.
I mean, at least with Lee Ashcroft, we got half an hour of competitive football out of him. I mean, that's just... He was almost injured, I think, before he'd even officially been announced. I mean, so he was announced at 11 in the morning, and presumably must have had a bounce game in the afternoon. So he's been announced as a Ross County player for all of 2 hours, and that's him. I don't know if we all became hamstring experts with Lee Ashcroft, and I remember you can have like a good a less serious hamstring injury or a really bad hamstring injury, and I don't know which of the two it is with Sean Mackey. But I'm just going to kind of rewind the clock a little bit and just give you guys a bit of insight, like to kind of how things have changed at Ross County over the past 20 years. Because I was in primary school when Ross County got into the league, and it was a really weird dynamic at first because Cali had always had the bigger fan base. There was a lot of acrimony with Inverness with the two clubs being merged, but I think people kind of put that aside after a while, and Cali kind of went up the leagues faster. And Ross County didn't, but what they did try to do for a while was really try and grow a sort of organic fan base among young people. Like, we got given free season tickets at school. And this was before like Uncle Roy and his business kind of took off. But we got given like free season tickets and things like that to go along to games and stuff. So, they did try to kind of build a fan base, and they set up like a soccer academy across the Highlands to try and see if they could find indigenous talent, for want of a better word. And for a while that worked quite well. And then they got up through leagues. They brought Neil Cooper in, and then Derek Adams, who was a million times better than any other manager they'd ever seen. And they did kind of get quite a bit up through the leagues using sort of local talent. And then they got to the Premier League, and at some point they just started spending money at a really bonkers rate. I think that's when I was still in school. The pendulum shifted. It must have been something I was in school when going to Dingwall stopped being fun for the Rovers. We didn't just go up and batter them. Like, they would come up and we'd go up and they would start battering us, and it stopped being fun. And then they just took off and they started spending daft money on players. And sort of along the way, like you say, something's been kind of completely lost there. I mean, they do have a fan base that is of a reasonable size, and people of my generation and younger, you will get people that support County, but not to the same extent that you do with Inverness, which is a kind of weird thing when you think about the divisions that the teams have been in over the last 10 years or so. So it is a slightly odd dynamic, and it's outside the shinty kind of demographic as well. It's not in the sort of shinty area. So it is a really odd kind of situation that you've had this team that's been successful. They've won a League Cup, they've won trophies, they've been in the top flight, but it just hasn't necessarily led to a much bigger fan base, or indeed a much bigger pool of talent coming through than you might have seen elsewhere. And it's a bit of an odd one. I can't explain why that is, and I can't put my finger on why that is. But I've often wondered that myself. But yeah, come back to the Sean Mackey of it all. It is just one of those things. It's complete rotten luck. But when your luck's out, it's out. And at some point, it's going to turn, as we keep saying. And I just hope it doesn't turn when we play them on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking back, I know exactly what you mean in terms of the county, the gradual change towards this sort of. I mean, they're never going to be able to compete against the sort of city clubs as such. They've done very, very well at a Scottish level, I would say, in terms of they've won the League Cup. They've been, I'm sure, top six at different points, haven't they? And then had some really good starts to the season. The season I'm thinking of is just because I play Championship Manager 0102, even still to this day. And they had it, what was it, Kareem Bukra, was it? Might be pronouncing the.
Kareem Bukra, the guy he wore the kind of snood thing.
The
bald guy with the snood, yeah.
Name that stands out as of that time, Les. So I throw back to your earlier years. But even going back to sort of 08, 09-ish, when we were in the second division, they got relegated. I mean, they did have a couple of spells where they got relegated into that old second division / League One. The first time was when Roy McGregor sacked Dick Campbell for not playing with style and panache when they were top of the league, and everyone was a bit like, all right, okay. And then they went out and got Derek Adams in. But I think, was it the other time that they had, was it Willie McStay that they had at that point? I might be wrong about that, but yeah, just with the way that the club had gone, it's only been in the last few years in particular where they've just been able to sort of flex that financial muscle and pull up these guys from England, the likes of Will Nightingale, etc. Even bringing in the likes of Simon Murray from Queen's Park and being able to spend a fee, and just having players like that can elevate them up a level or two and really kept them at arm's length. And they do sell Murray to Dundee, and look how that's cost them. But they've done that again in terms of the players that they've brought in, but the reputation and where they've been at with these players and the stage that they're at just hasn't married up so far in terms of the championship. So it's a dynamic that's definitely one to keep an eye on for the rest of the season with County and where they actually end up. By all means, we had a very poor first half to the season last season, but we're still very, very close to getting to the playoffs. And the gap's not as big as we were in terms of that. So I'm sure for their fans, they'll probably take a bit of solace in that. I'm sure everyone will probably think that league title's away for them. There's not a chance that they're going to be catching St Johnstone. If they do, credit to them, they deserve the praise. To take it back to you, Scott, they do have their choices at centre-back. Declan Gallagher recently missed out against Morton because he'd been sent off against Queen's Park and he'd given away a penalty against Arbroath. They'd been using Akil Wright and Iacoviti as their other options. Is that maybe a dilemma for Tony Docherty, or do you think is it one that maybe he's due a spell sitting out the team, given his sort of errors that he's been making recently? He's not maybe had the best start to his life in Dingwall, Declan Gallagher.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to say that anybody really in the Scottish Championship can be like undroppable. Everybody will go through bad sort of points in their season with form and stuff like that. So I think just because Declan Gallagher has played at a higher level for a lot of his career anyway, and obviously been capped a few times by Scotland in recent years, but I don't think just because you can't just keep going on reputation with that. You've got to, I suppose, if you're Tony Docherty, you've just came in the door. You've just got to go with guys that you're seeing in training that's doing well, or guys that you think are making a difference on a Saturday. Clearly, there's no many that are making a difference right now because they're still not winning games as of 8 games into the season. So, but, and I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to have the other two centre-halves playing in Akil Wright and Iacoviti. I mean, Akil Wright looked alright in the top flight, I thought. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't amazing. And then Iacoviti's also played in the top flight for quite a few seasons as well. So I think they've got 3 pretty decent centre halves there, and it's just a case of they'll just pick the 2 that are going the best at the time, and then that's how I think Docherty will roll with it. They've obviously got, as I said earlier, the young lad Dylan Smith, who's a centre half as well. If they really want to change it up, I think I remember him coming in. I think it was the playoff that they somehow came back against Partick Thistle. He seemed to make his debut just before that playoff, and he got sent off in the first leg down at Firhill. And he actually looked all right up until he got sent off, and he was quite fast. So I don't know if he might even look at getting some game time there to try and maybe give them a bit of extra legs at the back to play with an experienced lad next to him, whether it's one of them 3. But yeah, as I say, I think he'll just go on whoever he sees fit at the time. I don't think he's going to care of what name it is as long as they're playing well. That's who he's going to go with.
Yeah, because I don't know too much about County in terms of how they've been lining up a formation. I'm only going off basically flash score in terms of picking out the players and recognising them. I don't know if they've maybe gone with a 3 at the back at the start of the season and then changed it up. Well, Leslie, this is a bit of a strange question to ask, but where do you think it would rank if you had a county team that had been that sort of free spending in terms of sort of shocking championship surprises, if they were to go a full quarter without a win? Because I mean, it's a possibility if we get a point up in Dingwall, or if we get the win up there, which, based on how other teams have done, might be something.
It would probably be one of the worst starts from a highly ranked and highly favoured team since Czech's notes us last season. No, I mean, like I said before, that would be a completely other level to us last season. Less cartoons, more budget. I do think they'll come good at some point though. And the concern for me at the weekend is a guy who has scored against us for at least 2 other teams, and that is Jai Henderson. A very, very talented player who I would absolutely love to have at the Rovers. Scored against us for Inverness, scored against us for Ayr. He's now at Ross County. We've had Logan Chalmers already score against us for Partick, having done so for multiple teams in the past. If they get a goal, and if they do get something out of the game, I think it's going to come from Jai Henderson, because he's one of these players who just absolutely loves playing against us. Somehow seems to just raise his game every time he plays against us. So I don't think it's in any way a foregone conclusion that they're going to go a full quarter without picking up a point. I do think that if they do, that's going to really ramp up the pressure on the manager. I mean, there's a point where that's going to really start to ramp up the pressure on Tony Docherty. I mean, they've got Callum Davidson in the back as well, John Robertson around. There's always the possibility they can do what Ross County does in every single time of crisis, which is bring Derek Adams back in for another stint. There's that option there as well. Do I think they'll end up 9th at the end of the season? Absolutely not. Do I think they'll end up 10th? No. I think they're just too good, and I think there's probably, with respect to the teams around them, I think there's going to be too many other teams dropping points that they're not going to end up down there. It might take them a wee while to sort themselves out yet. But tell you what, if they beat us, I can see them going on and beating St Johnstone. They've got St Johnstone immediately after. I think if we take something off them, that's then going to become a game where St Johnstone can effectively put the nail in the coffin. If they beat us, I could see them then just kicking on and beating St Johnstone. And then that's when people start to think, oh, hang on, something interesting might be happening here. But as I say, the guy I'm going to be watching out for is Jai Henderson.
What I just realised as well, I just went to have a look just to see how bad the Ross County form has been. So just their home form alone, they've only won one competitive game since the 1st of March.
Don't say that.
No, but it was more, it's not whether they beat us or not, it's just the fact that how baffling that is that they've won one game. And I've not counted how many games that is. And that one game was 8-0 against Edinburgh City.
Yeah. It's looking back across the piece, just in general, the last game that they won in the league was 1st of March against Kilmarnock. So that was the last time that they won at home. And certainly in the league and in general in terms of league games. So, Leslie, I'm in full agreement. The last time that we actually won in Dingwall was back in 2012 when we won in the League Cup 4-1. Brian Graham got a double along with Greg Spence and Dougie Hill. I think that might have been the night that Colin Wilson started the game and really, really had a really, really good performance up there right before he had the unfortunate one in the derby, the weekend after. But yeah, Dingwall's always been a tricky place for Rovers to go to. It's one of those grounds where we've had the odd result over time. We've seen games, sort of leagues, where we've gone up there and done well. Particularly, I remember the game where Laurie Ellis scored a volley, I think, in the season we were going up against Dunfermline. I think we got a win up there. But in general, look, it's by no means a foregone conclusion, and I think that the psychological edge naturally lies with us. But at the same time, County know that they can come in. They've got the players, and Tony Docherty will be absolutely itching to get them going. So we'll see how it pans out. Just to come back on a final point, though, I do think that the weather might be a potential factor. I'm keen to, and this might all be absolutely futile, this podcast that we're having, and you might be listening along just as the game's getting cancelled. So we will see. I think we're probably at a point where we do want the game to go ahead, though, just with where we're at, where they're at, and to try and sort of see if we can extend that up to a 13-point advantage over them would be, that would be unthinkable given the circumstances, the situation at the start of the league, even ourselves being 13 points along ahead of them, let alone compared to where St Johnstone are at. But yeah, we'll move forward. We'll look at things from a Rovers perspective. A couple of points I just want to touch on. Stephen Lofer, as of course, as you've probably seen on the socials, released this We Led in Munich now, which is out, available at Waterstones, or preferably go to the club shop and get a copy there, because all the markup goes to the club, which naturally is the sort of best thing that we want. I'm going to sit down for a chat with Stephen on Monday. We're going to talk about the book and the process of writing it, and have a chat about his experiences, and we'll add that into the sort of Munich 90 or Europe 95 sort of series that we're sort of developing here at the moment. And there was, I don't know if you guys had clocked this, but there was a bit of breaking news as well from the club. I don't know if you've seen our group chat popping off, but yeah, the club have recently, they've just issued a statement this evening just about the East Fife and Montrose situation, where basically they said, we were deeply disappointed to learn that individuals claiming to be Raith Rovers supporters engaged in antisocial behaviour during the East Fife versus Montrose game on the 20th of September. Since the incident, we've been working closely with East Fife and Police Scotland to identify those responsible. We were informed yesterday that 3 individuals have now been charged. They've also been issued with bans from attending matches at Starks Park, with the length of these bans to be reviewed once the legal proceedings have concluded. We will continue to cooperate with the police and impose the bans on any other supporters found to have engaged in antisocial behaviours, whether at East Fife versus Montrose fixture or any other match where they present themselves as Rovers fans. We want to make it absolutely clear to all supporters that Raith Rovers are committed to maintaining and strengthening its reputation as a family club. Our priority is ensuring Starks Park remains a safe and welcoming environment for everyone. While we welcome and encourage passionate support, atmosphere and healthy rivalry, we will not tolerate antisocial behaviour from so-called supporters whose actions are damaging the reputation of our football club. It's quite a strongly worded statement there from Rovers about that situation, which is, I'm sure you will agree, it's good to see them come out and sort of make sure that they're making that recognised. Aside from that, let's turn ourselves into the Rovers of it all, with the game up in Dingwall. Leslie, just to start with yourself, I'll speak a bit about Ronan Hale, and he's mentioned before that he's pretty prolific from the penalty spot. Seems to have been getting his goals there. Bit of a reflection for us and how we've started the season as well. Dylan Easton getting a good few penalties in there. I was actually looking, because it's just been our 2nd anniversary of the podcast, I was looking back as to how many goals Dylan Easton had actually scored, both while we've been on the go and in his Rovers career. I think he's on about 1 in 3 for him at the moment, which is a pretty remarkable goal return. But yeah, what are your thoughts on things? Is that something that we need to be quite wary of, just defensively, discipline going into this game, making sure that we're not giving them the opportunity to tuck one away from the spot?
So I was thinking about this before we came on air, and it can go, we can look at it, I think, at least in one of two ways. On one hand, you can look at Ross County, you can say, okay, they're 9th, they've scored 1 goal from open play in 4 games, they've no won all season, they're going to be under pressure, they're at home. Go out there, press them, attack, and rustle those jimmies fiercely. On the other hand, you can look at them and say, they've got a lot of quality. They're going to get it right at some point. They've got a top-class striker in Ronan Hale. And if we go up there and become complacent or arrogant in our attitude, they could quite easily turn us over. I suspect Barry Robson is going to go with option B. And I suspect we'll be setting up in a way that is probably going to be a bit more cautious than we might have seen in recent weeks, recognising that you've got that quality and that you've got players there that, if they get half a chance in a box, are going to try and get a shot away. Having said that, I did see, some of the Morton fans on social media, I think, were a bit kind of like, come on, we could have gone for them a bit more, we could have attacked a bit more, and actually were pretty unlucky not to win.
Hilariously.
Hilariously, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did think that was quite interesting seeing, I know what gets said in social media doesn't reflect the whole fan base, but seeing a few Morton fans saying, look, we could have taken the handbrake off and we could have gone at them a bit more there. I don't think Barry Robson's going to do that. Easton. So I did a bit of calculation. He's scored, I think, 1 in 5 of all of our goals since he joined us. So since the start of the 2022-23 season, something just under 20% of all Rovers goals have been scored by Dylan Easton, which, considering he's not a centre forward, is a pretty impressive haul. So he's been, clearly a real quality signing. And one of these guys as well, we've talked about this off air as well. We all joke about the number of penalties that Dylan Easton gets, and you might say, okay, he dives, he makes the most of them, but also I think there's an element where he's one of these players who, because of how he plays, because of how quick he is, because of how good he is with the ball at his feet, it's actually very difficult to challenge him without fouling him.
Yeah.
And this got made, I remember Gareth Bale when he came through at Tottenham, and everybody was accusing Gareth Bale of being diving, calling him every single word under the sun, this little diving Welsh kid. And the point got made, because of how he played, because of the speed and the quality of the ball at his feet, it was actually just very difficult to challenge him without committing a foul. And I do think there is an element of that with Easton. Okay, he's very streetwise, and he does know how to draw it out sometimes. But I do also think, the quality he brings it does make it difficult to challenge him. So again, huge asset for us. But no, just to go back to what I was saying before, I do not expect Barry Robson to send us up there all guns blazing.
Yeah, with Easton in that aspect, I know it's been made before with the stats that he's got one of the highest sort of six. I know when Alan Temple was doing this, it might have been Craig Cairns or Alan Temple. I can't remember which one it was, but when the Fife Courier coverage was a lot more in depth, shall we say, they were talking about the stats, and one of the ones covered was Dylan Easton's sort of attempted dribbles is like comfortably one of the highest in the championship, and that was a couple of seasons back. So keen to see how that would have developed over the last few years, because as you say, he's just this type of player that once he gets on the ball, he's absolutely fearless in terms of being able to take a player on and try and get past. And again, it does get frustrating if he maybe loses it or he holds on to it too long, but you've got to accept that as sort of a payoff. In terms of the attitude for this game though, Scott, you've been quite vocal about sort of having this perspective on how Rovers approach games against certain teams. Do you think that your perspective on counties maybe changed given their start to the season?
They've been pish. Let's just go for. I'm joking. No, I still think, especially, I think we could be slightly more bullish and more going at them had it been at Starks, I would say, and I would want us to be going after them. I mean, like, it's a team that's lacking in confidence, clearly. They're no as free-flowing and scoring as we thought they were going to be so far anyway. So, but I do agree with Les. I do think that Barry is going to likely take the approach of setting us up to be more solid. By this, I do actually expect to see Sean Byrne back in the team on Saturday, purely to give us that extra protection in the middle of the park. Because as I've said, they've got decent players in the middle of the park. They've just got too many of them, and too many of them that are the same. So whichever ones they decide to go with on Saturday will be decent. But so I do think that we need to be cautious in terms of just making sure that we're, first of all, that we're solid, and we've been solid so far this season. I mean, what was that, 5 or 6 clean sheets in the first 8 games? I mean, and was the club put it up saying it was our best start since 2011? Was it?
Yeah,
I think I seen. So fair play to the defence and Josh Ray as well for that start, but I do think that, away to Dingwall, it's always a tough game, and I do think that eventually Ross County, as we've said a few times, are going to get their act together eventually. I hope it's no Saturday, but and that we do need to just be aware that they could have a fast start, get some confidence if they did get an early goal or something like that. So, yeah, I question even if guys like Lewis Stevenson might get brought in. Again, Ewan Wilson's been solid. He's been fine in the 2 games. I've not heard anything about an injury with Stevenson, so I also found it weird to see Wilson just coming in out of nowhere. And then, but I mean, to be fair, you've got then 2 very serviceable left backs that are going to both, if they're fighting for the jersey, then I suppose you can't quite be disappointed with that, because it means then you shouldn't be disappointed with either of them that are playing. But preferably for me, just for the experience, I would be going with Stevenson over Wilson. But as I say, I don't think Wilson's done any harm at all with his 2 performances against the Airdrie and last weekend against Arbroath. But yeah, I think we do definitely need to be setting up, first of all, on Saturday. It's not a case of just going up there to try and go for a 0-0 or something like that, but it's a case of make sure that they aren't getting sort of time on the ball, but also that they're not getting sort of an easy time of it. We've got to be at them, but at the same time solid as well. So it'll be interesting to see 2 o'clock on, if it does go ahead anyway, this game, that 2 o'clock on Saturday, to see, are we going to go with the same sort of team, or are we going to go a sort of more sturdy sort of midfield and defence on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I place into Barry Robson's sort of interviews over time, shall we say. But it does always talk about, I mean, certainly we've heard a lot in terms of made of it, particularly from people based in Perth after defeats. But more recently, spoken a lot about with games, if we come out and we don't get a win, it'll be, look, we still always try and go for the win, and we'll still always try, and that's our sort of main MO. And naturally, as football matches, it's kind of your job, isn't it? But I'm keen to see the degree that we do that on Saturday, and as to how aggressive we actually are. Because, like you say, County do have the players in there to still cause issues. What, Leslie, you were talking about sort of the commentary from Morton fans about how they were discussing the game. Again, very funny to see that refereeing decision go against them. The third this season couldn't happen to a nicer club. But with it, they were talking about how County took the lead and then they just kind of went into their shells, because it wasn't until, I mean, Morton had a goal that was a blatant foul chopped off for offside, and then they got their equaliser. But then after that, it was only sort of the later stages of the game where maybe County came into it and looking for sort of trying to take the impetus to them. So it's really hard to gauge their perspective and the dynamic that they've maybe got, because it probably goes back to us last season where we were getting into games, we were getting into good positions. You think back to the Hamilton Accies win at home, or the Morton game at home, where we go behind and then we go ahead, or we draw back, and then later on in the game we lose out because we're maybe trying to hold off to a degree, or we're trying to see things out or get a winner. Very difficult to tell. Scott's touched on a point there, Leslie, though. He does mention about Lewis Stevenson dropping out the team, but also as well, another Lewis that dropped out more through injury recently was Lewis Vaughan. Both of them scored against Dunfermline, but both were out against Arbroath. A potential return on that front for either of the Lewises for you?
Steve, I think it's probably more likely to see Lewis Stevenson come back in. And both with Lewis Stevenson and Sean Byrne, kind of like Scott, I did wonder a bit if they'd picked up something, if they were carrying a knock, if they weren't quite 100%, and that might have been why we'd made the change. So I mean, Ewan Wilson, I think he's been absolutely fine. I mean, he was a bit wobbly at the start of his first game, but I think he got into it pretty quickly. And he reminds me a lot of Liam Dick. You're maybe losing a bit of the quality going forward and some of the quality with the ball at his feet, but you're actually just getting a very solid left back, or kind of left side of somebody that could be on the left side of a back three. So, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if Wilson retained his starting place, purely because I think he's been fine, and he maybe does just add a wee bit of height if you're looking at kind of defending from set pieces and corners and things like that. But I think I might be I'd be more expectant of seeing Stevenson come in. And maybe one of the reasons I do say that is, if we are going to be sitting in, one of the ways that we've actually found joy when we've played in that way is with Stevenson, the quality of balls that he's put through for McMullen or for others to latch onto. I mean, that's been one of the real kind of things we've seen this season. We know he did it last season with Finlay Pollock too. There's the quality of putting balls through. So that would be something, if we are going to try and hit them on the break or kind of hit them when we're sitting in, that might be one of the rationale for bringing Lewis Stevenson back in. Vaughan, I'm not so sure if we'll see him back in. You absolutely, definitely want a guy of his quality in the squad. You absolutely want him as a finisher to come off the bench, particularly if you've gone behind and you're trying to get into the game. I mean, one thing that maybe did, I don't want to say disappoint, that did concern me a little bit about Vaughan is there's twice in the last few games, once the Partick game and then the Airdrie game, where he's had the chance to get a shot away and he's tried to buy a penalty instead. And I just kind of think, would Lewis Vaughan a season and a half ago have done that, or would he have got the shot away? And I don't know whether it's a confidence thing or whether he's still kind of getting himself back up to speed after injury. But I wonder if that's kind of feeding into the back of the manager's mind as well, with whether he comes into the team or not. And that's just by the by. Absolutely, definitely want him in the squad. That's just all my mind's running it. That also then makes me wonder too how far away Callum Smith is.
Yeah, that was
So
going to be the
we've
next
seen
point.
pictures. I've written it down here, Smith, question mark. How far away he is from coming back, because we've seen him in training and things like that. Again, if he's fit, you're not going to be starting him. If he's fit, you're going to absolutely have him on the bench if there's a space, haven't you?
Yeah, he was the last Rovers player to score up in Dingwall in last season's League Cup. So, be a good place to return. Lewis Vaughan, if we go back to him, he's scored in his last couple of visits to the Highlands in terms of up against Inverness, I believe. So, yeah, it's one to keep an eye out, especially if Smith's back. Then we do sort of increase our sort of forward options. Josh Gentles, he's not on the bench for Rangers tonight. He's not made the trip to Austria, so you would expect that he'll be fully available for Saturday. I suspect that they've probably said that it'd be more beneficial for him to have the opportunity even beyond potentially coming into a game for us rather than sort of just riding the pines, as Tex Rover would say. Over in Austria. Scott, what are your sort of main what main learns do you think that we can take from this sort of first quarter of the season from Rovers? What sort of positives are you taking from it? And is there any sort of areas that you think that we need to potentially improve on?
I think I touched on it earlier that one of the biggest positives and biggest things that's came out of it is how good and how solid we've been at the back already in the first 8 games. I mean, the fact that we've kept all the clean sheets, and I think only really Partick are the only sort of team that kind of have rocked us a wee bit in a game, I would say. And obviously St Johnstone to a certain extent as well, but even then, like St Johnstone, I didn't think they created loads of chances against us. Obviously, the second goal that goes in, we're just throwing everything at it, going to try and get an equaliser, and they've caught us on the counter attack. But up until then, it was 1-0. Game could have gone either way. Like, it was sort of in the balance. But yeah, I have to say that the defence has looked solid. But again, we were looking solid sort of from March onwards anyway. So I'm glad that it's continued. I know that there was a little sticky patch in the League Cup group stage where folk were thinking that we were kind of not looking as good. But again, what can you take for the League Cup? I mean, at the end of the day, it's still kind of pre-season. Guys are getting up to speed. There's a few new players trying to get used to how it's all going, but I get that the back 4 or back 3 or whatever we've been playing at times, there's only really been Jai Rowe, and then I don't really think that there's really anybody else that was new that has been playing regularly enough. I know Ewan Wilson's obviously came in as well, but I think that would be my main point, and the fact that just that we have been scoring enough goals, but I think we need to potentially look at taking a few more. Like Les touched on it with Lewis Vaughan, just taking more shots when the opportunity arrives. I'm not saying just shoot like on sight as they would say on Football Manager, but like it's just more a case of there is times where the opportunity has arisen, but somebody's decided to go out wide to get the ball in or to just pass it next to somebody. Whereas I'm not really going to have a pop at somebody if they're having a go for 20 yards out and it just goes over the bar, or at least to make the keeper make a save. At the end of the day, you're not going to score if you do shoot. So, like, I do think that we're a little bit shot shy at times, but whether somebody like Jack Hamilton, that goal last week, can that kick a bit of life into him that he's going to get the confidence? I mean, the goal he scored up in at McDermott Park earlier this season in the League Cup, that was the sort of goal that I'm going, right, that's the Jack Hamilton I want to see this season. The guy that's like what Brian Graham's been in terms of your sort of penalty box striker. Guys are going to be attracted to him because he's the problem. And then it means that guys like McMullen, Easton, Chin, or Vaughan, whoever's playing beside him, are then getting more gaps beside him up front to then run into them and potentially score themselves. So, yeah. But, yeah, to go back to my sort of start of the point, I would say that the defence is the sort of main positive for me in terms of how we've looked a lot more solid in this opening quarter of the season.
Yeah, I'd naturally fully agree. I mean, our chat was, we were discussing it during earlier this week, but I mean, you look back to Callum Fordyce and how he's been playing in particular. For the first 8 games of this season, he's been exceptional. And it's been a real sort of redemption arc, considering the difficulty that he had in the first half of last season. He gets injured on the opening day, and then he can't really get into the team, and then we're sort of rotating in the likes of Liam Dick to be able to use him there. And now it's just looked very, very stable. I think you do make an excellent point there, Scott. Just across the board, the depth, I think, for me is very pleasing. I mean, Leslie, for you, is there anything that's jumped out for you as being particularly eye-catching in this first quarter about Rovers or Barry Robson and the way that the club's been handled?
I'm pleased that we've got 14 points on the board. It took us a full month more. And I think we didn't get to this points tally until the Ayr game at home that was televised, where Lewis Jameson briefly turned into Prime Crespo. So it was another month of football before we reached this point last season. So I think we'll have a dip at some point in the season, but it's much easier to have a wobble from the vantage point of already having a good number of points on the board and being kind of well in the playoff spots and well clear of relegation spots than it is to be doing that when you've only got 3 or 4 points on the board. So I think I've been pleased that we've managed, even when we've not won convincingly, we've managed to grind out wins and points. And when we've not been sort of hanging on at the end, there's games where we've scored earlier, we've maybe scored kind of fortuitously, but we've not then been sort of backs to the wall, pull on an extra centre back, sitting really deep and scrabbling it over the line. We've managed to keep going about our business and get results over the line. I've been pleased and pleasantly surprised with what Paul McMullen has brought to us. And okay, he can't shoot. He has a less well-defined hairline than Lewis Jameson, but he's got significantly more game intelligence than Lewis Jameson. He's up front, he's bombing about, but he's doing it with purpose. And, he's making he's an absolute pest. And that adds a real dimension to our game. I think having a guy with that amount of pace and speed who can just, who can do the pressing that Barry Robson wants, that can ensure that a defender or a goalkeeper doesn't get a moment to think about what they're doing. That's something I think that's really been added, just that element of speed and pace. Because again, if you go back to the start of last season, the number of times we used the word pedestrian to describe how we were playing, and we were so slow, it was so slow. And I mean, part of that is in defence. It's Fordyce has actually been, like you guys were talking about it, and I think the post-match on Arbroath, Fordyce getting the ball up the park quicker, Docherty getting the ball up the park quicker. That's 2 additions this season, but also just having guys up front that have got a bit of speed about them that can bring us that bit of speed to our attack. So that's what I've been, I think, probably McMullen's probably symptomatic or emblematic of it, but just having a bit more pace and urgency to what we do.
Yeah, certainly when you compare him to Dom Thomas at Ayr, who's really, really struggled in terms of the start because he can't get into the team. I don't know if it's because Scott Brown's just not a fan. I'm sure they paid a fee for him to get him away from Derry and under contract there. And he's just really toiling to get into that team. And yet McMullen's been a consistent figure for us. You know that one of his strengths is his work ethic as well. That he's that type of player that regardless of where he's at in a game, he's not hiding. You see that so often with wide players where if it's not going their way, then it's quite easy to potentially label them as being like, oh, well, I'm sure it was, probably Darius and that is probably the best example for it, where it doesn't go their way and then it's going quieter, becomes quieter, goes into their shell. And that's someone who's a big fan of what he brought to the team. But with McMullen, he's just been fantastic in terms of how he just keeps going. And it's great to watch him bombing about the pitch. Right, we'll get a game of Should Dargo momentarily. Leslie, I do just need to ask though, your top. What have you got for us this evening? Because I didn't touch on this at the start, but I'll saved it for later on.
So I've got the top, and then I've got a story for you all. So this is Percy Raja Banda Aceh, who play in the second division in Indonesia. So I've been out in Indonesia for a couple of weeks with work. We've been learning about seawalls and their role in fighting rising sea levels, and also looking at what particularly some of the students out there are doing to learn how to kind of do this domestically, so we're not having to go out every time and teach them. But I picked up this top when I was here, Percy Raja Banda Aceh. So second division in Indonesia, 3-hour flight from Jakarta. Of course they've got a Scottish striker up front. Of course they do. A young lad called Connor Flynn Gillespie, who's Scottish, who plays up front for Percy Raja Banda Aceh in the Indonesian second division, and pretty decent player. I'd be quite happy if we brought him in. But no, the story I was going to tell you was I took my Rovers top out with me, and I was out for a run, and I was in a wee place called Mulabo. Look it up on the map. It's in the middle of nowhere. Not a tourist destination, just a 30,000 size Indonesian town. There's a big friendly guy, saw me out running. He said hello, and then I got lost, and so he saw me 3 times, and he waved every time. And I was at breakfast at the hotel, and I hear this voice say, "Morning, Mr. Stevenson." I was like, "I must be another foreigner." And then his voice comes again, "Mr. Stevenson, good morning." And I turned round, and it's the same guy I'd seen running, except he's now in his hotel porter's uniform, and he's carrying a big box of durian fruits. And what it was I've got Lewis Stevenson's name and number on the back of my Rovers top from last season, because I'm a big fan of any player that plays until they're my age. I'm a big fan of that. So I've got Stevenson 26 in the back of my top. So this guy had seen me running, and he'd seen Stevenson 26 in the back, and he's figured that I'm Lewis Stevenson. And I'm thinking, this is like, I'll get put in jail for this. This is fraud. You know, if he actually goes and Googles and sees this man whose muscles are 100 times bigger than me, who's 100 times more handsome than I am, and who's achieved 1,000,000 times more than I ever will, I'm going to get in trouble. So the same thing happened the next day. I was out again, and then somebody cycles past in a moped going, "Stevenson! Stevenson!" And they were just reading the name off the back of my shirt. They just saw a Scottish guy and just thought, "Oh, we'll just yell his name out." So if anybody is from Aceh is listening, I apologise. I am not Stevenson.
I'm sure you can be forgiven, and they'll understand once they recognise how good Lewis Stevenson is. I'm just back from Marmaris myself, and walking about the Grand Bazaar, notably famed for its sort of fake goods or knock-off football kits. And me and my girlfriend, every time we're going into the shop, the guys are like, "Who's your club? I'm going to get their strip for you." And I'm like, "Mate, you've not got our strips. You don't have our strips. Don't even start." There was one that one whose family are over in Scotland, one of the sort of guys who owns the shop, who was like, I know a few Scottish teams, Rangers, Celtic, Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, and I'm a Galatasaray fan. I remember we played a really, really small team from over there a few years ago, and I was St Johnstone, they're called. To which he was like, "Oh yeah, that's the one. But yeah, a really good experience, really interesting. And needless to say, didn't see any other Rovers tops over there. I did see a Greenock Morton top though, so they're probably raging on the Saturday, which is quite funny. Anyway, should McStare, should Dargo. Leslie, you've been taken off the duty here. I've given it to Scott, so it's we'll see if we cooperate on this.
Yeah, so I've got 6 clues for it tonight, and again, nothing to do with how far above sea level or how close to the coast or any Scrabble hints or anything like that. So just get into it with clue number 1. I was born on the 14th of June 1978 in Edinburgh.
Ooh, that's like dangerously close to a Hopcroftian era clue. So 78, 88, 98. Oh, so we're here talking about somebody that played for us in kind of McGlynn era Mark 1 later in their career.
Unless it was
a wee bit
earlier.
Or a wee bit earlier.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe sort of like early 2000s.
I'm going to go Laurie Ellis.
Okay.
It's annoying because Andy Smith's coming to my mind, but we've had Andy Smith before. I'll go with Marvin Andrews.
Edinburgh.
Oh, right, aye.
It could be Edinburgh, Trinidad and Tobago. It could be Edinburgh,
I
Trinidad
completely
and
missed the
Tobago.
Edinburgh bit.
I'm not... Robbie, see when you're editing this, you're going to have to look at our faces when you say Marvin Andrews, because that was brilliant.
Aye. No, that's fair enough. I'll leave it in. I'll make sure that it's left in. If it's it's definitely not that then. Shows how much I was because I was writing down the date, completely blanked on the Edinburgh bit. I don't know. Laurie Ellis is a good shout. I'll take another clue and I'll try and actually listen this time.
Okay, clue 2. My first ever professional club no longer play in the pro leagues.
Right.
Play in the pro leagues, so
Might not necessarily mean the SPFL though.
yeah, that's why I mean, it's quite. It could be down south,
but even then, someone from Edinburgh, as I've now remembered.
No longer play in the pro leagues. So does that mean? Does that mean the sort of leagues, as in league down to the top 4 divisions?
Yeah, so like for Scotland, it means that they're outside, they're lower than League 2, and the same in England, they're lower than League 2.
Brilliant. Grand, that makes sense. So that could be a Brechin.
Paul McManus? I think he's Kirkcaldy anyway, I don't know. I'll just go with that.
He's no Trinidad, I know that.
Well, at least I'm in the right country this time, Scott, so let's
So I'm thinking Chris Fahey, who was at Albion Rovers for quite a while and are no longer in the
he
leagues.
strikes me as a West of Scotland guy.
You're right, he does, but I'll stick with it. I've committed to it. I'll take ownership of it.
Okay, clue number 3. I have played for 10 different clubs, 9 in Scotland, 1 in England. And when we get into other clues and stuff about clubs and stats and stuff, this is according to Wikipedia, by the way. Before anybody goes, oh, that's different.
Right. Scotland. Someone had a spell in England.
We had Stevie Hislop as a guest before on this. I think we might have.
It doesn't preclude us having him again, though. Gary Wales. I know he went to Australia. I don't know if he played. I don't know if he played in Australia though, or if he was just going to Australia for reasons.
Just like John Baird, basically.
Aye. Again, the timing would fit. number of clubs might fit.
1978 seems too early for
88, 98.
So I think. So you're looking at someone that's been about 30 when you're coming into that sort of 2008, 2009 season. So
Yeah.
Right.
It's either somebody that's come to us around then or has come to us has been good and has come to us later in their career. Aye. Clubs. Club down in England. I just can't. I
love it when it's not me that's struggling.
Aye. I'm getting that blue and white half and half top in my head, and I'm just trying to picture like.
I think it must be earlier. I'm trying to think. The thing is,
again, maybe just a bit too young. Andy Todd.
Aye.
Because he was in that half and half top. Possibly just too. Possibly he's a wee bit older. But I'm going to go with that. I'll go with Andy Todd.
Okay. I can't really think of anyone at the moment. So I don't know. I'll go. Certain it wasn't, but Eddie Annand.
Eddie Annand. Okay. Clue number 4. I've played for 2 Fife clubs and 2 Highland clubs.
Ooh. 2 Highlands, so that is, that's a
county and
no, that's Stevie Hislop.
Aye.
Stevie Hislop's played, but did he play for another Fife club?
Would he have spent time at East Fife?
He may well have. Because he's definitely been at both the Highland clubs. I mean, Inverness, County.
What other Highland clubs could you have? Would Elkin count as a Highland club?
Yeah.
They would. Well, they would, eh?
Scott saying it would, so.
Aye. Now,
basically, my again, don't listen to me for geography, but anywhere above Aberdeen, I'm classing as the Highlands, basically. So, any club that you can think up there, above Aberdeen, go with that.
Stevie Hislop will do. I don't think it will be. I can't see us using him again if he's been already.
Yeah, that's the curveball, isn't it? Having the Highland clubs, because I think that's definitely then not Andy Todd. The fact that our former CEO didn't play for us rules him out, because he would actually fit all those other criteria. I'll stick with Andy Todd. It isn't him, but I'll stick with him in the interest of keeping the game moving along.
Okay. Clue 5. I signed for Raith Rovers in 2007. Went on to play 55... Again, this is according to Wikipedia. Went on to play 55 times and scoring 15 goals.
I mean, that would probably track.
It would. And I mean, so signing in 2007 sounds right, because I remember being at a party with a guy when I'd just finished uni who was also a Rovers fan who was complaining about Hislop shushing the crowd. And that would have been 2007, 2008. So it would figure. you're right. The number of games, the number of goals
Aye.
sounds right. I think you've got it, Robbie.
Okay, in clue 6, my dad also played for Wraith Rovers and was part of the
There we go.
1975-76 team that won promotion. Yes,
Happy
it's
days.
Stephen Hislop.
Aye.
Aye.
Well done, Robbie.
I'm just away to check
Well
the
played.
Text Rover guide.
Thing is, you put yourself off after clue 3 as well. I was like, oh, keep going.
When was the last time that we did I Should Mix the I Should Dargo? I'll need to have a delve into the record.
Just to let you know, he's not been done before because I've checked.
It's not been done before. Brilliant. That's good.
Because when I have done it on the few times, I always make sure that somebody, or I try to make it that it's somebody not done before. But we're going to get to a point soon that it's going to happen that it's used at a second time.
Aye. Well, no, I think that was a really good one. Admittedly, I did have a nuke at the start, but happens to us all at some point. We've all been there with wilder shouts. Leslie, I still remember João Vitoria's dad, so it's, it happens. But it's just my turn this time around.
And his English club was Gillingham, for anyone that wanted to know as well. He only played 8 times.
He's Fife that he played for.
He's Fife. He played 50 times for 2 seasons with him. Because he went to Arbroath after us and then went to East Fife.
Yeah, Hislop was I liked Hislop as a player for us. I was listening to an interview that Lee Griffiths did over in Australia, a sort of podcast, because John Baird had done a podcast, or a couple of podcasts, and naturally as Rovers fans you think, oh, John Baird is going to be talking about the cup final, which is very interesting to hear. But Lee Griffiths, they did a podcast with him at the same time after as well. He was talking through coming through at Livingston, and he was pretty scathing. Like, he didn't mention Hislop, but you could figure it out by, he was like, oh, he runs an opticians now, and he's like, he went on to play for like Wraith Rovers after and stuff like that. But like saying, I don't like know the ins and outs of it, but like Lee Griffiths was really like putting the boot into him, which seemed pretty strange at that point. But again, it's just, you never know what happens. It's behind the scenes. But for me, Hislop, I really, really like that. I mean, we've all spoken plenty of times about the celebration for his goal against Stirling Albion. But yeah, just in general, just what he brought to the team. And I think that having that experience to get us over the line in 2009-2010 for that title winning season, absolutely massive. But he was very much in the Bobby Barr mould of very unafraid to tell people if he thought they were being shitebags to him in the crowd. Like, that was his MO. Like, any time anyone was giving him abuse, he would just turn around and give it back because he wasn't tolerating it. So, anyway, that'll round us off for this evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I mean, just under an hour and a half. It might all be for nothing. It might be that we come round to it and the game is postponed. But if it is, either way, we'll still be back at some point in the near future, whether it's for a post-match. We've got the interview with Stephen Lawfer coming up. And then we'll be back again next week for the preview when the next game rolls around. But as ever, thank you for taking the time to listen, and bye for now.